Her latest film, Across the Universe, is a musical featuring over 30 songs by the Beatles. I am pleased to have Julie Taymor back at this table. Welcome. Here's what Stephen Holden said about your little movie. Somewhere around its midpoint, Across the Universe captured my heart, and I realized that falling in love with a movie is like falling in love with another person. Imperfections, however glaring, become endearing quirks once you tumble. This surrender is a kind of commitment that Ms. Taymor, a true believer in the magic of art, asks an audience. And it goes on and on and on. Now, some people didn't like it quite that much, as you know. Now, is this the kind of movie that attracts diverse responses?
I think so.
Because?
I think anything that's really different, that really takes chances, that breaks the rules, also plays with sacred cows like the Beatles music, it's going to engender that debate. And I welcome that. Better than bland, better than, wow, that was nice.
But that's also what you most want to do, isn't it? Take chances, go against the grain, get out there.
Well, yes and no. I also want to do the story right. And if I think that's how you do the material, that's just the way I do it.
I know that, but what was the last easy thing you did?
Easy.
A lot of people didn't believe The Lion King was that big idea for Broadway.
Yeah, I don't think
Michael
it's
Eisner
easy.
did, and you did, and I'm not sure who else.
Right. And Frida was unusual and different for that. Titus certainly wasn't.
Sure. As we well remember.
You know, Magic Flute, I've had fun doing them, and I've also had difficulties, but I don't think anything I do is easy. I hope it's going to be inspiring not just to other people, but to me as well. That's really important, that I get totally into what I'm doing and enjoy the process.
But it's also, you are adamant about somehow showing us your artistic vision.
It's not about showing my artistic vision as much as that's all I can do. That's what I am. You know, I'm not trying to shove it in your face, in other words. But yes, I am adamant. If you're going to ask me to do something, you've got to have a reason, and you've got to know that I may think a little differently than somebody else. So not every piece of material may be perfect for me to do. But if I feel connected, and this I definitely felt connected to, the Beatles music, the era, then I'm going to find a way in.
What I was going to ask, and you may have just answered, is what is it inside of you that wanted to make this movie?
First, the music.
Okay.
I grew up during that era. It was sort of my older brother and sister were the models for two of the characters. But I love the music, and, you know, my partner, my collaborator is a composer, so I'm extremely, Elliot Goldenthal, I'm extremely sensitive and love working with music. Opera, musicals, anything. And the Beatles music to me it transcends all time. It's music for all time. They're such great songs that I felt you could take them, there are 200, and I could cull 20, 30, and put them into a story where they could feel like they were coming from the actors' mouths, from their ideas, from their dialogue, as opposed to a jukebox musical, which just lays them on top.
How did you go about that? I mean, you knew the songs you want, 30-plus songs you wanted, and how do you make a movie out of that?
Well, I worked with Dick Clements and Ian LaFrennay, the two writers of the screenplay, and created a story that it's a round robin. You have an idea. Let's set a love story during this tumultuous time. It's something around 63 to 69 compressed into 2 years. And then you say, all right, we have 200 songs to choose from. What are the songs that will forward this story, could be the heart of the story? And these early characters, Jude, Lucy, and Max, the Liverpool guy who comes and meets Lucy, the middle-class suburban girl, and her brother, Dropout.
That would be Jude.
That Jude comes, meets Lucy.
Then meets Max.
And then Max, her brother, drops out of Princeton and gets drafted. So now you have a premise there.
And now you have Vietnam.
You have Vietnam, you have the race riots, you have the psychedelic era. The Beatles music, the 7 years of Beatles music, lends itself to early, naive Beatles, like Hold Me Tight, All My Lovin', I Want to Hold Your Hand. And then when you start moving along, songs like Let It Be just felt so right for the Detroit riots that moved into this incredible funeral, this double funeral that was going on in a gospel mode. The Beatles were inspired by Black American music. So putting it back into that mode made sense for us. And then you have the psychedelic era, Bono doing I Am the Walrus.
Right, playing Robert.
Dr. Robert, sort of a Ken Kesey.
Right. We'll see a minute of that in a second. Isn't it amazing that, as you said, and I didn't realize it, the Beatles only recorded for 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years.
And the changes in those 7 years. The early songs, which I adore, the All My Lovin' and those songs, if you think about a young rocker, male rocker today singing Hold Me Tight, Tell Me I'm the Only One, or I Want to Hold Your Hand, or It Won't Be Long, yeah, 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 Till I Belong to You. The beauty of those songs, and remember the girls screaming in the Ed Sullivan Show?
Sure, of course.
Is that they really got 15-year-old girls.
Yeah.
They really channeled their inner girl.
Right, right.
And so those songs became so popular.
How do you think they tapped into that? So
I don't know. I don't know how they did that.
Well, Elvis tapped into them as well.
Yeah, but they did. But these songs sound so good in female mouths now.
Yeah, oh, see.
You see what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
That those songs couldn't be sung by a young male group as well. That's why I put them into the young girls in our movies' mouths. They sing them. Evan Rachel Wood sings It Won't Be Long and Hold Me Tight. T.V. Carpio sings I Want to Hold Your Hand. And then they went through the whole era of the 60s like everybody else in that time, and Revolution came out of it. Or I Am the Walrus, Strawberry Fields, Lucy in the Sky. And watching, I think people grew up so quickly during that era, and that's what makes it ripe for a movie, because you compress the evolution of growth. The character of Lucy goes from this sweet, naive graduating high school girl, and as she experiences the
Woodstock
loss of a
and all that,
boyfriend,
yeah.
First
Right.
Vietnam,
Right.
and her brother being drafted, she becomes a mover and a shaker. She becomes politically active. You can see it in the early scenes that she's got the mind when she talks about babies and narcissism and having babies and why she won't have them, that the women's movement is slightly permeating her consciousness. But the fact is, you get in this short amount of time such unbelievable growth in these young people because they had so much to rebel against.
Who do you get to play her?
Evan Rachel Wood.
And who is she?
Evan Rachel Wood, to me, is the most talented young actress out there, bar none. And it's not just because
I'm not surprised that you're saying this.
Well, I saw a lot of young women, but she could also sing.
Yeah.
She could sing. And
what had she done?
Well, 13 is her most famous. That was when she was probably 14 or 15. She was 17 when she started this movie. And she's done, she did a fabulous movie with Ed Norton last year. In this year, she's coming out in King of California, In Bloom. God, I don't know the name. She did, what's the movie, the insanity movie, last year, The Crazy Family, The Dysfunctional Family?
King Lear?
Yes. I don't know the names of her movies, but she's always working. King Lear, that's a good one. She'd be a great Cordelia, wouldn't she?
Yes, she would. Now, James Sturgis, where did you find him?
Now,
Does he have a future?
Slightly. He's coming out in 3 movies after this, but we discovered him.
He plays Jude.
He plays Jude.
Right.
We did the open calls. We did all of that in Manchester, in London, Liverpool, the United States for this character. He had to sing and act and truly do it because 90%...
Open calls.
Open calls and agent submissions. And we found them. We found all of them that way. And the thing is that 90% of this movie is sung live. Do you know what I mean, as opposed to lip syncing?
Oh, yes, I do know what you mean by live.
Okay, all right, live. So, but, most musicals aren't live.
I know,
which means that the actors have to really sing.
I may be nigh, but I didn't come in last night.
Somebody's got to lip sync what I just said.
Yes, I know. All right. There's also Max, Joe Anderson. Who is he?
Well, who does he? Was the character or the actor?
The actor.
The actor is another wonderful actor who I met in London in one of these open calls. And I was he plays an American.
Right.
It was bizarre. We cast an young English actor. But this was an interesting thing. He came up to me and he said, I've read what the breakdown is of the characters. I'm not Jude. I'm Max. Now, he didn't want to play the lead.
Yeah.
He wanted to play the secondary part.
Got your attention, didn't it?
Well, he knew who he was because he is Max. He is.
So 30 songs here. You also, I should say, you got a whole bunch of interesting people like Selma Hayek isn't here. Joe Cocker's in here.
Eddie Izzard.
Eddie Izzard is in here.
Yeah.
And Bono, of course.
Yeah.
So you went out and got a bunch of people who...
To do the cameos.
To do the cameos.
And Salma, who I adore. Well, there was no big part for Salma, and she said, is there anything for me? And I said,
Is that the way she said it?
Yeah, Julie, is there something? Because I'll do anything. And I said, Salma, all the leads are very, very young.
Right.
But you could play one of the nurses. And she said, Julie, one of the nurses? You know, Salma, one of the nurses? I said, you could play all of the nurses. Seriously, I just decided she would be multiplied.
And somebody once said to Bono, I think it was the late Ed Bradley, said to Bono, you know, you two is one of the great rock and roll bands. Bono said, one of the great rock and roll bands? That's how we got
the one campaign, right? It's great.
All right, who is Sadie in this movie?
Sadie is Dana Fuchs.
Right.
And she's a fantastic rock and roll singer, Dana.
Yeah.
Who had done, I'd never seen her in Love, Janis, which was a piece she did off-Broadway, so she had that Janis style with her. But she did a demo of a movie musical that Elliot and I are working on, and we wrote the part for her. Because I didn't know if she could act. She had to audition as an actor. But she's so natural, and she brought, when you're doing just Beatles songs, and you're trying to do the 60s era, I also wanted the sound. If I didn't have other groups or bands, I wanted the sound of the other voices that came from that era, and I think that Dana has that. It's very different than Evan, who is more pristine kind of sound, more folk and pristine, and Dana as sexy Sadie. I mean, we don't do the song,
the Earth Mother.
But yeah, the Earth Mother. She's just got that raunchy, fantastic style.
You mentioned that when you created the characters, Max and Lucy, your brother and sister. Tell me about them.
Well, I'm 6 and 7 years younger than Michael and Laurie, and I come from a suburb like Brookline, Newton, Massachusetts. Right. And I watched my parents be hit by the 60s, thinking, what the hell happened here? What have we done? They went through the dropping out, Michael in and out of college. He was a musician, rock musician, cab driver, enlisted in the Army very early and was rejected, 62, I think. I went back and asked him about all of this. And my sister became not as much a radical, but she was involved with the Students for Democratic Society, which we have as SDR in the movie. And she was very politically active. And watching what these two, older brother and sister, went through and how my parents had to deal with the drugs, with the war movement was very, very important to me. I was more the voyeur. I'm the little girl behind the closed door opening and watching.
For people of my generation, was there a risk that somehow we would resent what you were doing with the Beatles? I mean, were you conscious of that at all?
Of course. But you can't do that. You've got to put blinders on. You know, I've got the possibility of working with some of the greatest songs of the 20th century, and I just have to count. It's like any of the Spider-Man, Lion King, Magic Flute. You've got a big burden. You've got a burden of history. You've got a burden of people knowing the material. But you have to hire the best people around you. That's what a director is to do. First, casting. Then Elliot Goldenthal, T-Bone Burnett, and T. Skoll, who produced the music, arranged and produced it.
You got T-Bone involved in this?
Yeah. And then tremendous production designer, all of that. The whole team. And if everybody's there, choreography, everything, you do this, and you say, we love what we're doing. Hopefully other people will come along with us. You can't be frightened. You have to be
true to the Beatles, but you also have to be, in the movie you wanted to do, true to the decade.
Both. You know, and of course there's going to be people, well, that's not my period, that's not what I was doing, but we're not trying to do a history. We're doing a musical, a rock opera. That's what we're doing here. So if people say, well, I didn't really listen to the Beatles, I was Dylan or the Stones, that's not the point. We're not just doing the era. That's why we limit it to the Beatles, because it is John Lennon, Paul, we can't even really say the Beatles.
Right.
Because it's not that group. It's the songwriters, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, with a little help from Ringo Starr. I say that because he's credited on one of the songs.
Did you speak to Mr. McCartney?
I did, afterwards.
What did he say?
Well, I had the incredible, nerve-wracking joy of sitting and watching the movie with him. By myself.
The two of you in a screen room?
With one other person, a friend relative of Paul's. And I thought, oh, this is going to be exciting. I was dying. My eyes, he was over here, my eyes kept going. I was so terrified. And it was very exciting because I think when we got to All My Lovin', I think I heard him humming under his breath, which put me at ease a little bit. And at the end, I asked him in a totally self-conscious way, was there anything you didn't like? You know how you put it into the negative? And he said, what's not to like? So
my songs.
My songs.
Yeah, but what did you think about? Why didn't you go see him before you started?
Well, because this is the thing. I don't think that any of them, to be honest, were that anxious to have a movie made of their music. And why would they? They would rather control it themselves, like Cirque du Soleil's Love. So I don't fault them for that, but we really had to finish and do the movie. We didn't get it quite done because I listened to some of his suggestions, and Yoko.
Wait. You listened to some of his suggestions?
Yeah, there were some things very few little teeny things that I agreed on when I heard it. We weren't finished with the movie at that time.
Ah, it's a small point, but
yeah, we weren't finished. It wasn't.
So he did make some suggestions. You let him see it after you sort of give him a rough cut, and
I
then he saw it.
I gave him almost finished, but the thing is, he made me. There were a few things that when I sat next to him made me a little uncomfortable.
Like what?
Like one extra pun, you know, the kind of puns. Yes. One extra pun of Rocky Raccoon. I thought, if I'm going to do some pacing cuts, that could go. Yeah. But nothing big, no songs, nothing, no scenes, no songs.
So he suggested that could go, and you said,
I will try.
I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, of course. It's Paul McCartney. Why not?
So has he signed on? Does he like it?
Yeah. No, he really likes it. And I met with Yoko, and she seemed to like it as well. Yeah. So.
Now, did you have any creative differences in the editing of this film or putting it together?
How do you know that?
What is just? I mean, I just heard something about.
Look,
there was a conflict in the editing room.
I went through what many directors go through, which is you get to the end and you think it's done, and some people think that it should be slightly different.
Like the person who hired you.
Yes. But we went through it, and I listened, and I didn't. I did both. You listen, and then ultimately you decide what you have to do where you can stay true to it. And I did some cuts for pacing, and everything stayed, and you're seeing my cut, and there's support behind it. So end of story.
Man, you got a great review in the New York Times.
We did, and they blew that up, and it really was unnecessary.
What was unnecessary?
To talk about it so that you would know about it. Can be private, Can be your own little struggle behind the scenes.
Never thought I would not know about it, did you?
I don't know.
All right. Spider-Man. You make that is this going to be a musical, too?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to make a Broadway musical out of this? No. I know you're going to do Spider-Man. You're going to have it the film.
Oh, I'd love to do this.
Okay, so maybe that, too.
Maybe, yeah.
Is that your first love since Lion King?
What, musicals?
Yes.
No, I love doing Shakespeare.
You don't.
I'm going to do The Tempest. I'm going to do The Tempest. I'm going to do a feature film of The Tempest.
You love musicals better.
I love opera, too.
What, you make a movie out of an opera?
Yes.
Like what? The Magic Flute?
No. I want to do Magic Flute. We put it on. It was on high definition in theaters. No, I want to do Grendel, Elliot Goldenthal's opera that I directed last year. This is the man you've been living with for 25 years. Yes, but more to the point, he's a great, great composer.
No, he's great.
Yeah. So we'll do that. I'm going to do a feature film of that.
It's great to have you. Much success.
Thank you very much.
I'm pleased for you.
Thank you
very much. And this great cast you put together, and the great music you put together.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
I mean, you are really dealing with icons.
Yes.
Especially for people my age. Right. Thank you for joining us, Julie Taymor, Across the Universe, her new musical. See you next time.